Greetings, my friends, and welcome to Canework Bangles. These tools are available at tinypandora.com. We're starting today with my Easy Bangles form. That's the metal form. And I make just a diagonal cut in that strip that I've made with that clear template. This is the 1/2 inch size. And I'm going to seal up that seam and just make sure that it's nice and straight and even. So I know my strip is uniform because I cut it with the template, and the size can be made smaller by laying your template on the inside or on the outside, and it can also be adjusted with the inside strip later. So here's a super slow-mo shot of the cane. I gave it to you in slow-mo because it's the only shot of the cane that I really got. I was messing around with it and I put it together and started cutting into it. But that's the canes that we've been making the last couple of weeks. I've just brought them down to a scale that I think goes well with a 1/2 inch bangle. So I made 2 more strips. They could be, those black strips could be scrap clay if you wanted. But I made 2 more strips for my bracelets. And that's where I'm going to lay out my cane to make my bangle. Well, you know, when we cut, you set your blade, cut straight down. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. So I start in the center of my strips. I think that's just a habit really probably from the easy cuffs, because the easy cuffs do have a center. The bangles, you know, of course, just go around and around. But I place it in the middle, and I'm really careful with that first slice because, you know, if it's way off, it's really hard to get it lined up. So I'm making sure that that slice is where I need it to be right there. And then I'll add my pieces and line them up the best I can. The reason these strips are 10 inches long is because when you wrap them around a bangle a few times, you need that extra length. You won't need 10 inches for this project, but when you're making a dome bangle, you really do. So I've got my strips laid out. You see the bottom one, it was much easier for me to line up because it's a couple weeks old. And that top strip is cane I just made. Actually, I'd made it the same day. So that's okay. You'll see when we settle it down that we can make everything line up at that time. So don't worry about it being just so, you know, where we're going to work with it. I use a small roller for this. I don't want a lot of weight on it. I don't want to mash it down. I'm just trying to smooth it and not put a lot of pressure on it. That's really why I, you know, had these made. This is the first tool that I ever had made, and it was because I couldn't find the right things to roll with. It just seems so easy, but it's kind of not. So you roll and then you do this burnishing, and I think the burnishing is something you're really going to like because these strips need to look really good before they go on the form. Applying cane slices to a baked form or laying out slices and trying to smooth them later is really tough. If your strip is good, your bracelet's going to be really good. So our forms are out of the oven and cooled off. And I put bacon bond on them about 5 minutes ago. So I use kind of a generous amount, but I give it 5 minutes to set up and get tacky. Other people like to use a lot less. I like to use a little more. Now I'm going to put my strip well over that seam. Just make sure your seams don't end up in the same place because that will form a weak spot. So I'm making sure it's centered. I'm leaving that place, that little edge just flopping around there because I don't want to cut it yet. I'm not sure exactly where I want to cut it until I get it more settled down. And you know, also along the course of pressing on it, it stretches it out a little bit. So that's why the length is not very important right now. It's just getting your pattern lined up. So don't be worried about the edges of this cane, on the sides or anything. All you're thinking about right now is that it's centered and that just with the heat of your hands, you're making sure that the pattern is symmetrical around the bracelet. And you'll see how much latitude we have with stretching that over the edge. So that's why I'm not worried about the fact that it, didn't cut as cleanly as the more seasoned cane that I had there. That's okay. It depends on your schedule. Sometimes you're going to make things the same day. Sometimes you're going to wait for a month, Anyway, so you pinch that down, making sure it's really lined up and looks really good. And we'll just have a little bitty bit to trim off in the end. And that's the point of using uniform templates to make uniform strips. Okay, so I'm going to cut at an angle, pick up the part that's overlap. Just remove that. Now I can slip that right together underneath there. It'll get a little bit warm and stick together. And you cannot find these seams on the bracelets. You're going to like it a lot. It really works out fine. So now I'm going to see, this thing is a little silicone thing. I'm going to lay it on there. It's a mold. You can use like silicone ice trays or whatever you can find. Walmart's got a lot of that stuff. Because you need a soft place to lay it while you finish wrapping it across the edge. Make sure your bacon bond's on the edge. Okay, I should have said that. Make sure your bacon bond's on the edge of your form that you baked, because it needs to really stick. Now you lay your blade flat. Don't want to angle it because you cut off some of your design, okay? So you're just laying your blade really flat along the inside of that bracelet. And we're trimming it off. If you want your bracelet larger, you can make a decorative strip for your base. But we're going to be putting a liner in this because I need it to be smaller. So here's some scrap. I'm going to mix these up separately, see what kind of colors I get. I know they're going to coordinate because they're made out of the exact same colors that are in there, or you could just use black if you want to for your inside. Black looks really cool, like when you texture it, you can texture it and put it in there. But I just want to show you because everybody's got scrap, and this scrap can be really pretty because, it's 3 colors. It's fuchsia, black, and white like we started with. You want to make sure that you have a nice even coat bacon bond in there. Bring it right up to the edge. The Bangles baked, by the way. After you got it all on there, before you put the inside in, you got to bake it. I should have told you that. So now I'll take my template and make my inside strip. Place it in my baked bangle. I bake them 3 times. I bake the base 30 minutes. I bake the veneer onto the base for 30 minutes. And I bake this interior strip for 30 minutes. So I'll just remind you of that because I probably should have mentioned it. So I'm sure I've got just about the right amount of band in there. I really don't want to cut this band short. I've done that before. Just couldn't believe it. It's so gooey and I had to take it back out. And make sure you've got it wherever it needs to be. And you make your angle cut like before. Just take off the excess like we always do. Then we'll settle the seam down. You know, I did the red one on film, that darker red inside band. Man, that was the worst video I've ever seen. It looked like a chimpanzee who had like never made a bracelet before. I was watching it and I was kind of horrified. And then I realized that my lunch was in the background and somebody had given me some lunch, but I hadn't eaten it. I think I was having some kind of an attack. You're never going to see that. Never. I mean it. You never see it. Okay, so I'm going to take these edges. Now I'm going to just gently make them come up and meet the outside band. Barely trim any of that off. It really comes out well. And this is my other trick. This is alcohol. And I take my alcohol and any smudginess comes off, plus, you know, anything that isn't, you know, perfectly smooth is now smooth because the alcohol makes it that way. It takes away the seams, takes away the fingerprints and stuff. And I just spray a little pool of it on my work surface because it's not hurting anything. And it's wintergreen, so it smells really nice. And that's going to bring us up to the last bake, 30 minutes with a foil tent, 275, and there you go.